terms of fashion and art and things like that are creative, you're always kind of trying to find codes within things. This idea of codes and putting tiny codes into things. And sometimes you do a big gesture to hide the smaller codes. I've always been fascinated in the way in which the human interacts with the idea of grouping of things or looking at associations. I think we are, as a society, are built in this way that we need to see visual associations to make ourselves feel comfortable. Recently in the show, it was about this idea, where things could be obvious. And sometimes obvious is an incredibly powerful code because it is something that relates to people on all levels. It doesn't need to have a descriptive barrier to explain if something is 2D or 3D and why they relate. I've collected art for 10 years, but like weird things that just, I always want something or find something I can't make or do, or how did I not come up with that idea? It's like these objects of levels. And I was quite scared about doing it because I think the art world is quite an odd thing. And I think over the last 10 years, since I started my own brand, I always thought that, art was a superior to fashion somehow. And up until I started doing this show, I really did believe that. When looking through this project and doing it, when you start to reduce everything to a level platform where there is no hierarchy, you start to see incredible merit in things. For me, it is that dialogue that you force out into the world. How amazing all these objects can be here in hindsight. I've been to so many fashion shows, I've been to so many exhibitions, and I think the idea of removing touch fundamentally from an exhibition is an incredibly difficult thing, because you actually remove an entire sense from an exhibition. So for me, it was like, how do we find materials that people could associate to? And that they understood that plastic, we all know what plastic feels like, or felt, we know what felt is. Because I wanted something that was worn not as costume, but was worn as a garment. Each garment had to be worn by someone. Someone had to live through it. Every piece in the show, right through to the Dior, they were all owned by people. They all had a purpose, There is more of a being inside a garment that is being worn. Gautier is one of my favorite designers. I think when I was a kid, it was the first book I stole from a library because I was just obsessed. So for me, the Gautier dress is like, I searched high and low to try to find a very particular one. I've seen so many images. We could have had the one that Madonna wore, or we could have had the velvet one. I'd located everything bar a jersey one. I wanted to try to create a reclining figure. And it was this idea that fashion as a device and sculpture as a device one relies on having the body in it and one doesn't. So there is this very kind of difficult thing with object. This idea of where you take art and fashion, and form and product, and you kind of where it becomes an object in itself. It's nice when you see something which is so famous seen in a different way. There is something in the act of the dress from 1980, the influence of Henry Moore, the dress on the table, like it's like meat on a table served up, and you get this kind of ghostly figure, which ultimately is neither fashion nor art. Well, that is fundamentally the newest thing, because it blurs and smudges everything. above there. It just needs to be in line to, yeah, I think it should be fine. And then it's going to set it up, but when I do a fashion show, it's 13 minutes. It's done in 3 months and it's executed in 13 minutes. And it is probably, it's like kind of like hitting a very large brick wall after it. It's the most depressing moment every, 6 times a year. I think in a society that we live in now, which is incredibly fast in terms of imagery. We have never seen so much imagery. I'm not against it. I feel that the world is fast and the world will continue to become faster, and you have to work with that. Some people, believe fashion maybe should slow down, but I don't think the fashion can slow down because the world's sped up. And with this, it's sort of completely different. It's sort of like 2 years I've been working on this, and then suddenly it's on for 3 months. I cannot have the name Giaconetti written on the ground. I just don't want it, because I think it represents too many things now. We put too many layers and devices on it. It rings too many bells. We live in a moment where fashion and art are massive banking systems, and we, as a society, put them there. What the worth is that this idea of looking at something and it sparks creativity to produce something that fundamentally is not for money. When I grew up in the 90s in Northern Ireland, you could have lost everything within 24 hours. I remember going to school in Markerfeld and driving through to school, being dropped off, and then the next day driving to school and looking down the street, and there was no street. And it was amazing. Horrendous, but amazing. Because it meant that, literally, it could be gone tomorrow. And I think that's important. I think it's immensely important. I think destruction is one of the most important things in society, because you have to break something to rebuild it. You have to weep, you have to become isolated, you have to be emotional, you have to feel that, that one day you might never be able to do it again. If you feel that, it can be taken away from you, then you have the fight and the urge to make sure that you keep performing. When I first moved to London, I went to Camden, and that was 12 years ago. It was so amazing. When I grew up in Northern Ireland, you didn't really have that. When I first went to Camden, it was as if I'd been in darkness and it was bright again. You know what I mean? It was sort of like everything became bigger. London was the dream, like an island. It's like a paradise. But then what happened is it ate itself, and in the end shafted the country. And I don't think people have woken up to the idea that, sometimes it is culture that in the end will eat itself. So I don't believe in a slogan, political statement on a t-shirt. For me, it's just like, just get out and do it. We are hitting a wall in terms of a cultural phenomenon, which is that we, on different levels of society, are starting to wake up to the reality. If we don't work together, we don't get on together, we're not going anywhere. The importance is the show is here, right now. The exhibition does not come to life as static objects. It's when people start to walk around it, is when the exhibition is real. You literally fire control out the window, and then suddenly you have to kind of be a voyeur on something that you've done which no longer is yours, you know, and then you have to let go. What is so interesting about life is that you will never, ever get there. And it's, you know, as sad as that sounds, I find it quite, sometimes morbidly quite uplifting, because I feel that you never get there, because if you did, how tragic it would be to feel that you did.